for 30 plus years, and I am a Citizen Police Academy alumni person. So that is how I have become acquainted with Chief Danny Barton, even before he became chief. So today, our conversation is about policing and racism, especially in Coppell. And as Chief shared with me, that George Floyd was just the eruption of a volcano that continues to boil underneath the surface. So, our dialogue today will be a little bit about how to help make the surface not be as explosive and to help the undercurrent. Um, Before I give Chief to you, he wrote a letter in June, and I'm going to read a couple of excerpts from it. It was the letter to the citizens of Coppell, and he's very upfront. And he also addressed this letter to the citizen, but his police officers also had a different perspective that he had to help train them to see the perspective of the citizens. So here we go. Um, he says, I'm not satisfied, and I'm paraphrasing, I'm not satisfied that we only have a few bad apples in policing. We have serious systemic issues profession-wide that are ignored and sometimes taught to the new officers coming into the academy. And the death of George Floyd did not happen suddenly. It was, he says, I was not this one police, I'm sorry, it was not one police officer's actions that caused this death. It was the actions and inactions of police officers and departments that feed the bad aspects of police culture. Over-policing is awarded within our ranks. We call it proactive policing, and it has filled jails and prisons throughout the nation. So that's just a little bit of what he wrote. The letter is online. You can find it and read it in its entirety at your leisure. And I turn you over to Chief Barton, who has been Coppell's police chief since December 2018.
Well, thank you, Grace. And I tell you, I'm honored to be here. Um, when I was asked to come talk about this topic, there was no hesitation. This is a topic that I think every police chief needs to be right in the middle of. And I've been a police officer for 25, 26 years. And when I first became a police officer, I had just gotten out of my field training. It was in a different department. I didn't start in Coppell. And the Rodney King officers were on trial for that beating in Los Angeles. And about, I don't know, it was just a couple of weeks after I got released from training, the verdicts came out and all the officers were acquitted. And riots broke out in Los Angeles. There was a lot of rioting going on in the town that I was in. And, it was a very, very contentious time. And, that was 28 years ago, I believe, 1992, if I did my math right.
Yep.
And, and I've been a student of the profession, and, we haven't really changed much, because back then the chiefs were out in public saying, yes, we're going to change, we're going to reform and hold officers accountable and all that stuff. And some change has been made. I can't say nothing's been done. There have been some progress, but not enough. And certainly not enough when it comes to race relations in the country between the police and the Black community specifically. And so as a chief, I often tell my officers that go pick a time in history when there were protests and riots, and you'll see a police officer right at the start of it. It was some type of an action from a police officer somewhere in the country that set off set off the response that it did. And so, like I said, when the George Floyd stuff erupted, and then you had the Kenosha shooting not that long after that, you know, that's where law enforcement should have stepped up and really took this tragedy and start working towards meaningful change. Because like I said in the letter, you know, it's not that we're teaching our officers to do bad things to people. It's just the training and the style of policing that we've used in America. It's over policing. And an example I'll give you is most police officers are they're evaluated, right? They have a performance evaluation annually, and their police activity is what they're graded on. How many arrests did you make? How many cars did you stop? How many reports did you take? How many tickets did you write? And so when that's our goal, is to rack up those numbers, that leads to bad decisions, and that leads to people going to jail that don't need to go to jail. That leads people to get tickets that didn't deserve to get a ticket. And so there's just a whole lot of wrong with that. And that's what I meant by over policing is, you know, that's an unfortunate thing that our profession got it wrong in the 90s, but we still do it. That style of policing, we call it proactive policing, came out of a study in Kansas City back in the early 90s, and police departments across the country started to use that philosophy of policing, and it's just led to. I'm not saying everything started in the 90s. Trust me, it started way before that. But when I say over policing, that's what I'm talking about. So I don't know if you want to go to a question or.
If someone has a question, but I would like for you to address training along those lines and diversity and sensitivity and cultural training for our Coppell officers and the profession in general.
So, so in the police profession, you know, we put a lot of time and money and effort into teaching them the technical aspects of their job, right? How to drive your car, how to shoot guns, how to use your defensive tactics to defend yourself, how to make proper arrests, knowing the law, things like that. So we spend virtually all of our time right there. And, you know, since I've been in the business, we haven't put a whole lot of, in fact, maybe none, into the heads and the hearts of the officers. We get plenty of hands type training, but, you know, we take a 22, 23-year-old person who wants to be a police officer, and we put them through you know, anywhere from 16 to 30-week training academy, and they come out the other side and they're handed enormous power. And that's a lot of power for a person that age, and we don't teach them how to use it. We don't teach them how to temper it. We don't teach them how that power impacts the people around them. We just teach them, hey, this is how you need to go out and just stop cars and put people in jail. And so what we started doing in Coppell was we brought in some trainers, and we went through a battery of emotional intelligence training. And we also, and that's going to be ongoing, the emotional intelligence, because, you know, if I can teach you to be more empathetic and teach you to know yourself and how you impact people, then, you know, because I can't teach you for every situation out there. And we go through unconscious bias training. We go through it's called cultural agility training, and it's really good training. we've always had race relations training my whole career. We've always had it. But it wasn't well received back when I was young. It was not well received just because of the style. I think the training that's out now is just so much better, and it's a deeper dive. It's a deeper think, and so we do that. And we participate in allies and community. I wish I could get more officers into allies and community at a time, but it's for the citizens mainly. So. And then I tell you, I think the best way to train officers is through stories and informal conversations, and we have those constantly here. And the city of Coppell has a committee put together on racism, and in that committee, along with all of our employees, we're gonna take the things that have been wrong for a long time, and we're gonna start moving in the right direction. And we're not gonna fix everything in a year, but we can go a long way in a year, a long way. So that's kind of the training we're putting together right now. So part of the training is right now I've got supervisors going through some pretty intense leadership development, and it's not police leadership. It's mental thinking. It's I can't challenge your beliefs unless I can challenge the way you think. And so we're getting our supervisors' heads in the right spot, and we're well into that, while simultaneously we're building the Coppell Police Department's annual service. We don't have a name for it yet, but it's like a service plan on what we're going to do, how we're going to serve this community. And it'll be a public document, but it'll lay out the expectation for everybody that works here, and they'll know exactly what is expected and what is not condoned. It'll be very explicit.
Okay, along those same lines, training costs money. Let's talk about the quote unquote defunding of police.
So, when I first saw the defunding the police, I think it was during, when it really broke loose in Minneapolis. I think I saw the first sign that said that. And I'll tell you, my initial reaction was, they've had it. They're frustrated, and to me that was a message of, if this is the police we're going to get, we'd rather just not have them. And then it became a bigger talking point, and just depends on where you're at in the country. I tell you, most of the police departments I know, they're not as well funded as people think. They may have a big budget, but law enforcement is an expensive service. And do we like going to mental health calls where people are in crisis and we're the ones called? Absolutely not. There's not a police chief in the country that would not rather have social workers and mental health officials, to handle those calls. So I don't think anybody's fighting that. And if there's ways to tighten our budgets to make that better, then we're all for it. But I think if it's just a punitive thing, I don't know that that's going to fix anything. Because you're going to lose. You're right. You're going to lose training. You're going to lose a lot of officers. And then what do? I mean, crime's a reality. Crime really happens, and it's not going to stop. But I do think it was a good little slogan to open up, not open up, but like really press the dialogue on you know, we pay for this service as taxpayers and citizens, and we want you to stop doing it this way. So, you know, I don't know if that answers it or not, Grace.
Well, I personally, as an accountant, defund means take all the money away and not have it at all. So that interpretation, it does not necessarily apply to what is going on, but it's just, I think it's a quick way to just express something, a soundbite, for lack of a better answer. Sarah, are there questions that are online? I can't see the chat.
We have one question so far. The question is, what about encountering mentally challenged people? And then we got one more question that's actually related, which says, what needs to change to get mental health resources available to assist law offensemen?
So what about encountering mentally challenged people? So this is so that's another training that we've put our officers through. Obviously, mental health is a big spectrum. I mean, it's big and it's complex. We brought in some special training for people that had intellectual development, mental needs like autism, things like that. And it really helped our officers because sometimes when you encounter a person who's mentally ill and we don't know anything about them, it can look suspicious. It can look violent. It can look angry. And it's really been a really good tool for our officers to slow down. And because we know that, you know, if we close the gap, so to speak, to stop something, to stop a behavior or to get them to comply, we're sometimes making things way worse, where we're actually separating ourselves would make it better. And we're looking for more training. There's not a lot of training, and we've even discussed, you know, going out to universities and finding subject matter experts and trying to develop the training ourselves. And but again, you know, it's going to come down to officers slowing down and not being in such a hurry and not being in such a you know, do what I say mode. You know, there's a lot to take in, and you know, and it's a tough job. It's tough when you're, you know. I think I'm going to move into the second question.
Well, while you're looking at that, I actually attended the training that was given for the police officers for citizens that are on the spectrum of autism, and the officers that were in there were very they were very grateful that they had been exposed to it. And I was grateful to have been exposed to that training also. It was eye-opening for everyone. So thank you. So what's the next question?
So it was what changes, what needs to change to get mental health resources available? There's a lot of that going on right now. That is, I would say, between the police chiefs all over the nation right now, that's a big topic, and we're really reaching out to mental health providers and trying to figure out, because this is new. This you know, send a mental health officer or a social worker, you know, because it's you know, sometimes people are in crisis and they're being extremely violent. I mean, extremely violent. And, you know, those are the tough ones. And, you know, right now, I know, so we have a consortium with Carrollton, Addison, and Farmers Branch. We all share a dispatch center. We all share a radio frequency. We all share a SWAT team. And so we are right now trying to work with several local organizations to develop that very thing. There's a lot of grants that are coming out, to help us financially, to help all the PDs. And then we're also looking at putting mental health professionals in dispatch, so they can take a listen and maybe be ahead. Like maybe they can start the de-escalation on the phone as these other workers are on their way. Also, they're better at picking up cues of mental health crisis than maybe just your normal dispatcher. So those are a couple of things we're looking at resource wise. But I think you're going to see it. I think that's going to be a big boom in the public safety sector.
I agree. I'm going to jump to a question from Natasha. And your question reads, what are the top 3 things I need to do if I'm pulled over? And she goes on and says, there's a lot of misinformation out there and I want to be proactive and pass that information on to her husband and son. And does Coppell ISD offer ride-alongs? Now, I want to answer one of those questions because I am a Black woman and I have Black men in my family. And the one thing I learned that I had no clue about is that my nephew keeps all of his ID in the overhead in his sun visor because his hands will always be free and available. I had no clue about that, had no reason to think of it, but these kinds of conversations help us to think about some of those things. And I will let Chief go ahead and answer the other parts of her questions.
So I would say, let me make sure I got your question. Top 3 things to do if you're pulled over. So I will tell you, a police officer, a traffic stop is a serious deal. I mean, we make them all the time, but none of them become routine. We don't know who's in the car. And so as we walk up, we're a little bit on edge, you're a little bit on edge. The first thing I would say is just keep your hands visible. Like you can put them on your steering wheel or something like that. When I was a street officer, as I walked up to the car, if I couldn't see your hands, that would be my first request is, hey, can you put your hands on your steering wheel for me? Because the hands are the dangerous part. And so, the other thing is just listen to what the officer says, do what he says. If you think you're being wronged, if you don't think you should have been pulled over, if he asks you to step out of the car and you don't think you should step out of the car, or whatever however that traffic stop goes, you've got to, I would say cooperate and then complain and come to the PD or we give everybody a card now. When you get stopped by the police, there's a little card and it's a complaint or compliment card. So you can go to our website and you can either fill out a compliment that the officer was doing a great job, or you can file a complaint. And we take those very serious. And some people think, they don't look into that, and that's not true. We look very closely at complaints because the one thing I do know is bad apples don't suddenly appear in a police department. They gradually appear. And so if you don't keep your eye on the little things in your department, you're going to look up and they're big things and they're big problems. You've got problems in your community. And so we pay ultra attention to the smallest details. So if you don't like the question the officer asked or the tone of his voice, because we have sat down officers and coached them on the tone of their voice, because sometimes an officer thinks he's being logical and you hear him being argumentative. And so again, we want to train the officer to recognize that's part of the emotional health training, or I'm sorry, emotional intelligence training. So I'd say that's the thing. It's just, it's just cooperation. It puts everything at ease. I hope that, the ride along, there's a lot of on the ride alongs. We do have ride alongs. I think you got to be 18 or older. I think you can ride at 17 with your parents' permission. Now right now with COVID, we haven't done ride alongs since March, and I don't know when we're going to open that back up. But when we do have ride alongs, I think it's really good for citizens to see, just how professional the officers in Coppell really are. And then you just get to know them and just as people and find out, they're pretty good guys and girls. And so I would encourage it whenever we open it up. So who knows when that's going to be.
Well, to add on to that, I totally agree with Chief Barton on that. My personal experience is the first thing I did with Coppell PD was to do a ride along 100 years ago. And I think the second thing I did was took advantage of the women's self-defense classes that the department offers to women who live and work in Coppell and to high school senior girls. So that's every year also. I don't know what's going to happen in the future, but those are ways to be exposed to the police officers in a way that you can kind of, like you said, see how they operate. And lastly, the Citizens Police Academy is very eye-opening. To attend one of those the next time they have them. You get to, sit with the officers and they will show you some of their inner workings. And I learned things like Coppell has a teen court. We were able to do building searches, which are scarier than you can ever imagine. Fake traffic stops. I got to play a drunk woman and a crazy woman. So it's a place where you can be involved in the police officers' lives, and they can see you too, because they get to be exposed to the citizens here in Coppell. So I'm going to get through with my public service announcement. Next question.
So I
That's
think
all.
the social worker. So I think it's just common. So are we planning to hire a social worker? Not internally, not yet. We really, as a department, we don't get a whole lot of mental health calls. We get them for sure. And, but it's again, we're working with the consortium. We're going to go down that avenue first and see how that pans out. And then, there's also training. So Texas puts on it's called a mental health officer. It's a 40-hour course. It's expensive, but we're going to try and get as many officers through because right now a lot of police training is shut down because we just can't put a bunch of officers in a room together from all over the state. And so as soon as we can get those trainings fired up, we'll be working there. I will say, we did hire a legal advisor. He comes in and he has been helping us with this new philosophy of policing. We are already moving the needle in Coppell because of what's happened in this country. And I went to my boss and I said, hey man, I'm not going to wait around for the rest of my profession to change the way we do things. We'll just do it in Coppell. That's all I can do. And so things are definitely going to change in terms of our police strategies and philosophies. and they're already changing. I can tell you that, and it's been good. So, is that it?
Well, that's all the questions I see, but we haven't discussed qualified immunity, the topic that we as citizens just learned about recently.
Right. So qualified immunity. So when a police officer takes an action and it's not a good action, let's say, he's in the middle of something, and the person who was impacted negatively out of this interaction, they sue the police officer. And so what the courts do is they look to see if they've already ruled on something similar to what this officer encountered, right? And so if they have, the officer does not get qualified immunity. He's on his own. He's going to get sued. If it's something that the courts have never seen or never ruled on, or it's something we've just they've never said anything about that type of action, then they tend to rule with qualified immunity. But when they put out a qualified immunity ruling, they put it out with a warning to all police officers saying, you are now on notice that we didn't like the actions of this officer, but it had never been talked about in the courts. So going forward, you're not to do this ever again. And what I say to my officers is, if you slow down and don't get in a hurry, and don't let your emotions get the best of you, and don't let your ego make decisions for you as a police officer, you won't have to worry about qualified immunity because you'll do your job correctly. So, I think the bigger problem, and this is just my personal opinion, the bigger problem are the police unions and sometimes the officer associations, because they have contracts that give officers more protections than sometimes the courts. And so, that's a big thing that needs to be, when we talk about reform, that is one thing that those contracts need to be limited when it comes to accountability. We don't have anything like that in Coppell, but when people are saying take away qualified immunity, well, you can take that away all you want, because if you don't deal with these contracts that keep bad cops employed, it doesn't matter. Because there's officers working, and it's been all over the news. There's officers who have committed crimes who are still working as police officers because they got some form of arbitration, which I find to be appalling. But it's out there and it happens.
So having said that, what are you doing on the national level to help your fellow police chiefs? Because I know there are police chief organizations that help with the workings of the departments and monitoring and et cetera. So can you talk a little bit about what we're contributing to the national conversation of policing and racism? We're a member of the Texas Police Chiefs Association, the International Association of Chiefs of Police, the Texas Police Association. The hard part right now is nobody's on the same page. And quite frankly, and I'll just say it, and I'll say it from a frustrated police chief, there's not enough being talked about when it comes to race relations. I think there are too many silent mouths. And so when I do talk to other chiefs, or I get an opportunity to say something publicly to chiefs, I try to go there, because we have got, good Lord, we've been doing this since the beginning of our country, and we have yet to change.
We have yet to change anything. And, you know, it's just, I don't know, it's mind boggling to me that, that's something that we can sit back and be okay with the way we provide service to certain communities, and then at the national level, why are we not talking about it? And why are we not making real change? Now, I'm a member of the Police Executive Research Forum, and they are really making some big strides, but not every police department is a member of PERF. And after the Kenosha shooting, Chuck Wexler, their director, he fired off an editorial to all the police chiefs that are part of it, and it's thousands. And he basically just said, what in the heck is going on? Why are you guys not doing anything? Why are you not talking about it in your own police stations? Why are you afraid to come out and say, you know what, we got to do things different? And it was a very pointed and great editorial. And in fact, I sent that out to all my supervisors in the PD, and I said, this is what I'm talking about. So, but yeah, on the national level, all I can do is get in my comments here and there.
Okay. Well, having spoken to you a little bit, I understand it internally, just like having information, sending it to your supervisors and communicating with your various shifts. Can you discuss a little bit what you're doing internally to shift and expose the dialogue for heightened awareness and actions?
Yeah. So I send out an email every Sunday, and I've missed the last 2 Sundays. I'm going to tell them myself, but every Sunday since I became chief, I try to send out a department-wide email, and most of it's just about what's going on, and then I try to end it with something about our culture, and because we have a fantastic culture here in Coppell, and the police department is just part of it. It's a citywide, it's an amazing culture of service, and so talking about race, it can be a very uncomfortable conversation, and a lot of people, I'm experiencing this, a lot of people don't like to have that conversation. They just want to say, hey, I don't do that, I don't need to talk about it. And I have to remind them, yes, you do. We all do. And we can't fix it until we're aware of the impact that we're having on people. You're doing what you were trained to do, but I'm telling you, you're going to have to challenge the beliefs that you've had throughout your career. And so I've sent out some controversial emails that really twisted some of the officers up. But that's what it was meant to do. It's meant to get into their head. And then I've circled back around and I meet with the units and kind of work through the discussion. And because it's important. Look, we have the power to take away your freedoms. We have a power to stop your travels. We have the power in some instances to take another life. That is a ridiculous amount of power. And, we have to hold that very, very sacred. And when you look at the problems between the police and the Black community, what you see is there's no trust because of an unjust use of power. That's how I break it down. And again, I'm not afraid of the topic. I've had some officers get furious, and I just told them, hey, you're working for the wrong chief, because I'm not going away, and we're not letting this topic go away. We're not. It's just, it impacts too many people, And, you know, before George Floyd, between Rodney King and George Floyd, there's been way too many police incidents that were just as egregious as Floyd's, you know, and that's what created that volcano. And so I try to tell the guys as much as I can is it's one contact at a time. It's one day, 1 hour, 1 minute. It's knowing that you impact someone with everything. Even if someone waves at you when they're driving by, how you wave back is going to impact that person. And so self-awareness is the first steps, and you know, and compassion and empathy is where we're headed. That's what we're trying to get to. I see a question. Oh, boy, that's a great question, Jennifer. How has our culture in Coppell made it difficult to hire new officers who still ascribe to the old ways of thinking? So it's so I think about back in 2017, we decided to change the way we hire officers completely. Because we had suffered we had hired guys and girls who had come from other departments, and they had old school thinking in terms of policing. Like, my job is to throw people in jail and that's it. And they're not here anymore, but man, just dealing with that while they were here was a mess. And so we quit hiring police officers. You know, I can train just about anybody to be a police officer, but I can't train your character, and I can't train your heart, or you bring that with you. And so the traditional way of hiring a police officer, there's a element in it called the oral review board, and it's a bunch of police officers, and they basically yell at you for about an hour. And they ask you questions, and they sometimes degrade you. They just try to see if you can handle it, right? And we haven't. I don't think Coppell's ever done that harsh. But my first department I got hired on first, I walked out of there thinking, my gosh, I must be the worst human being on the planet. And but they hired me. So we hire to our culture. We hire to the head and the heart. In fact, I'll give you an example of a question. So so we'll ask an officer, or not, we'll ask a young applicant, you get called to CVS over here, and it's a mother who's living out of her car because she doesn't have a job. She's broke, and she's stealing baby formula for her child. What are you going to do? And the answer we're looking for is buy the formula and get her some help. And if the person gets it right on the first shot, then we say, well, what if the manager is adamant that you take her to jail? What we're looking for is it's time for a conversation with the manager. You're not out anything. We got your formula. Let's have a heart here. So that's what we're looking for in the next generation of officers is, we used to hire the guys that could take care of themselves physically, right? They could fight. They were evaluated on whether, if I'm in a fight somewhere and this guy shows up, can he save me? Can he help me? And that was ridiculous. I mean, with the technology and all the tools and equipment that we have, that's just an obsolete mindset. So, but yeah, to be honest with you, Jennifer, the real answer is we turn away a lot of those people. We have some officers working here now that are from other departments, and they are excellent. Because they just fit. They were looking for us. They hated the culture of where they were, and they were looking for something like Coppell, and they came in and they've been outstanding.
Yes, I have spoken to a couple of officers that have shared with me that when a police officer comes here from another agency or from the academy, they are taught the Coppell way of policing. And that's the kind of community that we want, that looks out for its citizens rather than having to arrest them and throw them in jail mentality. If there's not another question, I want to switch gears for a moment. Not another question? Okay. Early in the summer, Chief Barton, you spoke with some of the African-American citizens here in Coppell because you wanted to learn some of our experiences and thoughts and things that were top of mind. Would you like to share with us a little bit of what you learned, what stood out to you the most?
Oh man, so that was a powerful night. I think there were several things that stuck out. Was, I don't know there's somebody famous that says, what is it we don't know about each other? And the answer is everything. And I knew most of the people on that call that night. There was, I don't know, 8 or 10 people, and I knew most of them. But when I sat and listened to their stories from their youth and growing up, I was just floored. I was just, it was almost, I can't think of the word. Everyone would tell their stories, and some of them were horrific. I mean, some of them were, yeah, I had a family member that, this was in another state, that this family member stopped to get gas at a gas station, and he wanted to use the bathroom, and the clerk said, no, it's a whites only bathroom. You'll have to go somewhere else. And he had to go, so he went ahead and went in there, and when they came out, the guy shot him. And I was like, you gotta be, and as they're telling these stories, they're not all that horrific, but they were all horrific in their own way. And I think what caught me off guard and what stood out the most was everybody ended their stories with, but that's just the way it is. And I thought, man, because I didn't have to go through life thinking that, and to sit and hear people that I'm friends with, knowing that they've lived their whole lives thinking, well, that's just the way it is. And and that really just kind of fired me up. Just, we gotta change things, man. When you get down and hear people's personal stories, I don't know how you can be a human being and not want to change that, because it's it was just God, I know I'm at a loss for words, because there was so much coming at me that night. I didn't talk much. I just sat and listened, and it energized me. I was like, what can I do to help? What can I do? I've been living in this world, and all this stuff's been going on in front of me, and I didn't know it was going on. But when people say something, I'm like, oh yeah, I have seen it. I just didn't really understand what I was seeing. I was just moving through my life. And when I heard those stories, I was like, I want to help. And the way I help is I have a platform. I have a voice. I have an organization. And I don't want anybody to go through their life saying, well, that's just the way it is. We're just treated that way. Because nobody should be treated that way. And again, I don't think anybody I hope nobody wants other people to feel that way. But yeah, the stories were, and these people telling these stories were my age and just a little older. This stuff didn't happen, 100 years ago. This stuff just happened 40, 50, 60 years ago. And when you have these stories, and I'm sure they tell those, I'm sure the families talk about these stories and they carry those stories with them. And then here I come as a police officer saying, hey, you shouldn't feel that way. That's just
Ignorant.
arrogant. It's ignorance and arrogance, I think, on my part. And it made me so much more empathetic to a world that I thought I had figured out, and but I didn't. And and I told a lot of those stories. I didn't tell the names of the people who told the stories, but as I made my way through the PD and I relayed those stories, man, the officers they were like, you gotta be kidding me. And I'm like, no, I'm not kidding you. This is what happened. And I can tell you a story. I talked to a community member, not from that particular meeting, but there was another meeting, member that told me a story of something that happened this year that was just egregious. And, so it's still here. It's still here. It's just that people have adapted, and there's too many people that have to walk around going, well, that's just the way it is. And I don't buy that. And this, I just think if you're paying attention and if you care about the world you live in, you need to get involved and you need to be part of the solution, and part of it's just being a good human yourself. And, it was a great night. It was I think we went over by like an hour on time that night.
Yeah, it was intense.
But again, I started off my law enforcement career. The first 6 years of my career, I worked in all African American neighborhood, and it was. I didn't grow up in anything close to that. I grew up in a really country town, and but I learned a lot about that community, and there was a lot of crime and there was a lot of violence, but there was 90 to 95% of the people were great people. They were just poor. Everybody wasn't committing crimes. And it was just I don't know. I don't think I could be where I am today had I not had that experience.
I can tell that it has shaped your observations, your thought processes, your curiosity, and your willing to learn about people. So,
Well, I think that's what, to me, police, being a police officer is about people. It's not all this stuff you see on TV. These, arresting the bank robbers and chasing cars at 100 miles an hour. Those things happen so rarely. And especially in Coppell. It's even more rare in Coppell. But even in the cities around us, that's rare, right? And most, 90% of your 95, 98% of your day are just common everyday interactions. It could be traffic stops, it could be taking reports, it could be, anything, but it's a people business. And I think we have forgotten that. And, I hate the notion of the thin blue line, because the thin blue line is some people say it's it separates good from evil. And then some people say it's us versus them. And no police department in this country can do their job without the help of their community. And you've shown me a community that has poor, that has a lot of crime. And I'll show you a community who doesn't trust their police. You know, and there's a reason for it. It didn't happen last week. It didn't happen 10 years ago. It's been going on for hundreds of years. And it's time for us as police to be the police that the community expects. And the whole community, not just some of it. And so that's why I like working. I love Coppell, man. We have a lot of support. This community supports us immensely, and I tell our officers, this support is not because of how many people you arrested. This support comes from the fact, at least I hope, by the way we treat them and the way we serve them, and we can lose that trust real quick if we don't pay attention to how we treat our community.
Correct. Well, on that note, are there any more questions? I guess I can look. Nope, no more questions. Nope, I think we've answered them all. If there are no more questions, I would say let's wrap this up.
There's gotta be, there's one person, you want to ask that question. Go ahead.
Make your opportunity. Well,
I'll tell you, Coppell PD is not perfect. We make mistakes, and but we own them. We don't try to hide them. We don't try to turn them into something they're not. If we stumble and fall, we stumble and fall, and because we're humans doing a very difficult job. And but I will tell you, as a police chief, the one thing I feel is when our community is unhappy with us, they let us know. And I love that, because everything I hear inside the building is one thing, but the most important thing is, how do y'all feel out there? And we're a work in progress, and we always will be. And we're trying. And when we get our service philosophy together and put on print and release it to the citizens, and we'll probably ask for citizen input for some of the parts. And in fact, I know we're going to ask for citizen input, but because we can't do this without you. I tell my guys, we have some promotions coming up, and when you promote in this organization, you have to read books that aren't about policing. They're about leadership. They're about servant leadership. They're about organizational health, and then you have to be a public speaker. You got to give a 10-minute speech, and the 10-minute speech is always the question is, the chief says the communities keep communities safe. Tell us what that means to you. And so I honestly believe that communities keep communities safe. We can't do this without you. And not a minute goes by that I think otherwise. So these types of things are important. I wish there was no COVID, because we wanted to really get out. We were going to really get out and engage the community this year, and then COVID happened, and but we'll get through it, and we're getting through it as a community. So is there 2 questions?
Yes, Pat is asking if either of us have read Cast by Isabel Wilkerson, and it's the origin of our discontents. And Pat answered, no, I have not read it. It is on my to-read list. I did go through the Other Sons by the same author, so it's on my list. And Chief Barton is very open to learning about new books because I shared one with him yesterday. So, Chief.
Yeah, I'm still reading this one. So,
Okay, well,
I tell you, I've heard a lot about Cast. I want to say I've seen that in our city manager's office somewhere. Somebody's reading it over there. But I'll get to Cast. I really like the documentary 13. I thought that was an amazing documentary. But yeah, the more I study this, again, I kick myself because all this was in front of me the whole time. I just didn't know what I was looking at. And I hope a lot of Americans are doing the same thing. I hope we're not just sticking to the old beliefs and it's not my problem. So it's all of our problem. And sooner we figure that out, the better. But I will read Cast.
I will too. Dennis has a question. He's thanking us. And then he wants to know, what can other civilians do to help heal relationships with African Americans and other minority groups?
Be an ally. Be an ally for your community. I'm not saying join the Allies and Community program. I'm saying be an ally, and read books like Cast and get to understand and have conversations with people from the Black community and listen to their stories. And they're not looking for help or advice. I think what we can do as a community is it's just in the way we make people feel belonged. When conversation that we had with the several members a while back, that was another thing that stuck out. I forgot to mention, Grace, was there were several people that said, all my life when I walk into a room, I'm the one that doesn't belong. And you know what? We got to be the ones that make them feel like they belong, because they do belong. And I mean, I just put myself, I can't imagine walking into a room and going, I don't belong here. Like, just because of the color of my skin. And so that's terrible. And so I would say, as civilians, be an ally and just do the right thing.
Yeah, it is a lonely feeling being the only Black person in the room. But I don't care. I've gone beyond that. But Dennis, just FYI, I attended church, and I told all my church members, if you have any questions about racism, about being Black in America, about the causes of the deep rootedness, feel free to contact me, because I will have a conversation with you. And the people at the library know me, and they know how to find me. So if you have any questions, feel free. And read.
That's what education is the key.
Yes. Learning. And sometimes that just means having dinner or lunch with people that are totally different from you. It's just so much fun to learn about other cultures. That's one thing I like about Coppell, is that we come from all over the globe and all over Texas, all over the United States. And it's fascinating to me where people come from. And I think that's part of the key, is being curious and open and understanding and, letting things go from there. Anything else before we wrap it up? Well, I'd like to thank the library for having this conversation. And Chief Barton, if you have anything else, I'm Grace Johnson, and thank you all for allowing me to be a part of this dialogue. Chief?
Same. I really appreciate the opportunity to do this. Know that because of COVID, my door's not always open, but you can, feel free to anytime reach out to me if you got a question. If you can probably reach out to any police officer, but we're here for you, and we get up every day and we put on these uniforms to serve this community. We're not here to police it. We're here to serve it, and we're grateful we get to do it in Coppell. It's a great city, and it is diverse, and that makes it fun. And I tell you, when getting to know the different diversities in town, and sitting down and having conversations it's a blessing. And it's not that you learn that you're both really different. You start to realize that, man, we're a lot alike. We're just from different places. And, we all just want the best life we can have. We want the best community we can have. And we want our kids to grow up safe and be successful. And we do that as a community. And I think that's what makes Coppell so unique, is it's a community. And I think it's a community that cares about itself. And it's not just a place where people sleep. It's people are invested in this community. And so I appreciate the privilege of getting to serve as a police chief here. And I wouldn't want to do this anywhere else. And but again, I know with COVID, you can't get too close to the police officers. They'll walk backwards if you walk towards them. But just let them know, what you're thinking, and they're always up for a conversation. We got some chatty guys, so I appreciate everything. And again, if you ever need anything, reach out to me. I'm here. I'm always reachable. So thank you very much. Thank the library for doing this, and I have enjoyed it.
Me too. Thank
Yes.
you.
Thank you so much to our panelists. That was a fantastic discussion, and we really appreciate you guys being here with us today, and for everyone who attended. So have a great afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you all for attending. Bye.
Take care.
Bye.